Hey y'all, I'm back and I am so excited to be with you. So remember the last lesson we had was about discrete functions, meaning those dots randomly scattered all over the place. Now we're going to be talking about domain and range, but for continuous lines. So these are continuous functions and we're going to be finding the domain and range. Let's get started. Let's get started on this page. So first off, we're going to review some vocabulary. We have domain and range. So the domain is the set of all possible x values. So when we look at the x-axis, what direction does it go? It goes left and right. So in discrete functions, we're looking at all of the x values in a set of coordinates. But now we're going to be looking at continuous functions. So those are continuous lines. So you'll see something that looks like this. You'll see x in the middle of two inequality symbols and then two numbers. So I see this number right here, let's say it's -5. So -5 is less than all of the x values, and x is less than whatever value this is. So let's say it's +6. So this is what a domain would look like for a continuous function. Range is the set of all possible y values. So when we look at the y-axis, we notice it goes down and up and down. So for a continuous function, we want to know how far down do our y values go, and how far up does it go on the y-axis. So let's look at this example. The lowest point on the y-axis would be right here. And let's say that's 3. 3 would be the lowest point, and it's a closed circle. So remember, we use this symbol. So the lowest point, and then our y in the middle, and then I see it's another closed circle at the highest point, and let's say that's 7. So we're saying that 3 is the lowest point and the tallest point is 7, basically, and y is going to be everything in between that. And since it's a closed circle, that means that those points are included. So y can equal 3 and y can equal 7. But this is what you'll see for ranges. So range is always going to be the y. Domain is always going to be the x. So x is how far left to right. Range is how far down to up, how low to how high. So remember, an open circle means that that point is not included in the solution. That means that point would not be included in the solution set. And remember, if we have an open circle, we are going to use the less than and greater than symbols. Notice they don't have the line underneath them. Then we have closed circles. That means that that point is a solution. It is included in the solution. And remember, if we look at a closed circle, we're going to use the less than and equal to and greater than and equal to symbols. Remember, they have the line because that means that this point is included. So it is also equal to the value of that closed circle. And this is another symbol I want y'all to look at, and I want you to add it to your notes, is the arrow. In arrows, it is a line that's going to continue in that direction forever. So that means that often our graph is going to continue going on and on forever and ever. And in math, the number associated with arrows is infinity. Just remember that for later. So remember, when we're finding the domain and range, we're looking for very specific things. For domain, we're looking to see how far left to how far right. We're looking to see if there's an open or closed circle at that point. And we're looking to see on the x-axis, what values are those. And remember, we're going to write it in this order. A number is less than x is less than a number. But these symbols are going to change depending on if we have a closed circle, which would mean we're using this symbol, or if we have an open circle, which means we're using this circle. So those are the things we're looking at. So in this first example, I'm going to look to see at this graph, how far left does it go and how far right? So what's the furthest point left that it goes? It stops right here. And the graph continues, I'm in line, I'm in line, I'm in line, and how far right does it go? It stops right here. So I know the numbers I'm at are going to be -2, and 4. And for domain, I'm always gonna have an X in the middle. So I wanna see what symbols are at these points. So I see there's a closed circle right here, which means I'm going to use less than or equal to. And I see there's a closed circle right here, which means I'm gonna use less than or equal to. So notice I'm just trying to see how far left, the furthest point left it goes, and the furthest point right it goes. For range, we're looking at how high and how low it goes. We're using the same symbols, but on the y-axis, meaning range uses the letter Y. So it'll look like this, but remember, the symbol depends on whether or not we have a closed circle or an open circle. So when it asks us for Y, let's go ahead and make sure we have Y in the middle. And looking at the graph, I want to see how low does this go? What's the lowest point? And it's right there lined up with 3, -3. And then the highest point, if I want to match it up with the highest point, it would be right here at 4. At the lowest point, I see we have a closed circle, which means we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. And at the highest point, we're going to use the same symbol because it's also a closed circle. So on this side, we have the lowest number, and on this side, we have the highest. So the lowest is going to match up with here, and the highest is going to match up with here. So the lowest number is -3, and the highest number is 4. So for domain, it's like we smashed it in, and for range, it's like we narrowed it to see how tall it was. So we're just looking for domain, we're looking to see how fat is it. For range, we're looking to see how tall is it. Let's try marking off what symbols we're going to use. So for domain, we're going to use X. This point right here is a closed circle, so that means we're going to use the one with a line. So remember that. So now let's see how far left to how far right this graph goes. The furthest point left is going to be right here. Notice it doesn't go anywhere past that. And then the farthest point right it goes is right here at 6. So our line is going to go from -5 to +6. That's the furthest left to the furthest right it lines up with. So the furthest left is -5, furthest right is 6. And now we want to put the symbols that match up with those numbers. So this is a closed circle, meaning we're going to use less than or equal to. And on this side, it's an open circle, meaning we're just going to use less than. See, look, you got it. So now we have range, meaning we want to see how low to how high does the graph go. So the lowest point is about right here at -6. Notice that this is the lowest it goes. And then the highest point is up here at 2. So range is always going to be Y. Our lowest number is -6. Our highest number is 2. But since it's on the line, meaning there's no symbols right here, because it's a solid line, It's almost like it's a filled in circle. Those points are included because they are on the line. So we're gonna use less than or equal to symbols. So remember, if we have a closed circle or a solid line, that means that point is gonna be included. Also, if we have an arrow, all of these things mean that the points are included, meaning you would use this symbol. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's work on the next one. So here on this graph, I see there's multiple dots. They're trying to confuse us. They're trying to get us to look at all of these different places when we really don't have to. Because for domain, we're just looking to see what is the furthest point. And in that case, it's right here at -2. And then what's the furthest right it goes? It's gonna be over here at +7. So for domain, remember, we always use x. X is a set of input values, meaning the domain. So we know it's x, and we know the furthest point left is -2, and the furthest point right is 7. So now we want to use which symbols. So right here, I see a closed circle, meaning we're going to use less than or equal to. And over here, I see a closed circle as well, so we're going to use less than or equal to. Notice it's always going in this direction. It's always the less than symbol, but you have to decide, is that point included, in which case you would use the line under to show that it's equal to, or is it open, meaning that you would not include that point. Now let's look at range. Range is a set of y values. So we want to see how far low to how far high, because remember that y-axis is vertical. So the lowest point this graph ever touches is right here at -3. And then the highest point, the tallest point, is up here at 6. And the graph includes everything in between. So it's like we squished it to see how high it goes. So the lowest point was -3, and the highest point was +6. Right here we have a closed circle, meaning we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. And up here we have a closed circle, meaning we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. So remember, the domain is how far left to how far right it goes, and the range is how far down to how far up. Forgot to do that over here. So this can be read for the domain is -2 is less than or equal to x, which is all of these values, which is less than or equal to 7. The range is -3 is less than or equal to y, all of these values, which is less than or equal to 6, the highest value. Let's look at our last two graphs. Remember, if we see an arrow, arrows are associated with infinity and also with the less than or equal to symbol, because that's saying that all of the points are going to continue on forever and be a part of the solution. And remember, the number for forever is infinity. So domain is the set of all x values. So I'm going to put x in the middle. I want to see how far left to how far right the graph is going to go. So we have the furthest point left is right here at 0. And then how far right is it going to go? If we see an arrow, that means it's going to go on forever. So that number is going to go on until infinity. So the numbers we use are 0 and infinity. And because this is a closed circle, that means we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. And remember, if we have infinity, we're also going to use the less than or equal to symbol, meaning it has to have the line under it. So 0 is the lowest point, and infinity is the highest point, the furthest point left it's ever going to go. Then we have the range. The range is the set of y values. So we want to see how far low is it going to go to how far high it's going to go. So the lowest point, again, is at 0 because it's not going anywhere beyond that. And then the highest point, it looks like it might stop here, but it's actually going to continue going in this direction forever. So this one is also going to be going until infinity upwards. So our numbers once again are 0 as the lowest value, and the highest value is infinity. And remember, since this was a closed circle, we're going to use less than or equal to. And since this is an arrow going up forever and ever, that means we're going to use less than or equal to as well. So this is basically saying the domain, this graph is going to start off at 0 and continue going right forever to infinity. And the range is saying that 0 is the lowest point on the graph, but that it's going to continue going up forever until, infinity. Now let's look at our last example. Remember, domain is the set of all x values. So always write the x, because domain is going to be x values. Then we want to see how far left to how far right it's going to go. And we see that this is continuing up and left forever. So the point is going to go until infinity as the lowest point. And it's doing the same thing on the right side. So it's going to continue going up and right forever. So the lowest point will be negative infinity, because remember, this is the negative side, and the positive side is going to be infinity as well. So our two numbers are negative infinity and positive infinity. And since it's arrows, remember, arrows mean we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. So on both sides, we're using the less than or equal to symbol. Range is the set of all y values. So we want to see how low to how high does this graph go. And it looks like the lowest point is right here at -1, -2, -3, at -3. And that's a closed circle, remember, that point is included. And this graph is going to continue going up because I see these arrows going up forever. So the highest point it's going to go is to infinity. So our numbers are -3 and positive infinity. And remember, since this was a closed circle, we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol, meaning it has the line under it. And since infinity, the arrow, is associated with closed circles, we're going to use less than or equal to.